Happy Easter, everybody. Welcome to Geezerology. I'm Scott here in Florida. We're having a beautiful spring day here, and I'm sitting inside making a video. And the dogs are not happy about that. There's Bob in Missouri. What's going on with the weather up there, Bobby?
It is absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, I'm sitting there thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm inside doing a video and it's beautiful outside.
We should be outside hunting Easter eggs. Not you're making a video, right?
Right. Well, I had daughter number 2 over today with the grand dog, so we had a good time with him.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll get this done and get out of here and go enjoy the weather.
There you go.
A couple of weeks ago, Bob was telling us about some of his favorite live albums, and he threw a monkey wrench in there, something I didn't expect. The Little Feat album, Waiting for Columbus, and I had never heard of Little Feat. I had no idea Bob was a fan of Little Feat or anything like that, so it got me curious. And so I decided to have a listen to it. I've listened to it 3 or 4 times through. And so I just wanted to give you a quick report on what I think of this Little Feat live album. And yeah, okay, Bob. I thought it was, it was okay. I understand it. I understand what the appeal is and everything, but it's just it just wasn't something that grabbed me a little bit. There's this I call it Southern fried boogie going on. And with a bit of a country tinge, right?
Right.
And then and that was okay, but it's like, all right, it's not all that interesting to me. And then all of a sudden they would go into these like Grateful Dead long jam sessions, and it's like, yeah, no, I don't know. It was okay. I understand it. But it's not something that I would spend a whole lot of time with. I listened to it 3 or 4 times just to make sure, and every time I listened to it, it was just, yeah, this isn't grabbing me. So I decided, knowing that we had this issue with Humble Pie, and I didn't like the Humble Pie live album, so I thought, well, let me go listen to a couple of other Humble Pie albums, see if I change my opinion. So I listened to the Little Feat debut. It was very different than a live album. The Little Feat debut, I don't know if you're familiar with it. The title of it is Little Feat. It's a self-titled debut. And there was all pedal steel guitars and harmonicas, and about 3 tracks in, I said, no, enough of this for me. No, I'm not going to go there. So, but then I got to thinking about it. Well, I'm curious, at what point was it that they went from this pretty hardcore country rock band into this boogie band? So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to move up and give a listen to each of the albums in order, just to see where that change happened. And the change happened, I mean, in the second album called Sailing Shoes. And now all of a sudden, now we're into that Southern fried boogie territory, which I find a little easier to deal with than just a hardcore country rock. So it's like, okay, I got it. So I listened through to that, and I did like that album much more than the debut. The debut, I couldn't even get through side 1 of it. So it just, I just don't like that kind of stuff. I would be more inclined to listen to that studio stuff than the live stuff, mostly because, again, this goes back to my distaste of live albums. They especially bands like this, they tend to want to go in and tend to want to just go off on these tangents where they want to jam and everybody shows off their prowess on their instruments and everything like that. And I thought, that's okay when you're actually there seeing it, but let's just listen to an album. Nah. So I went back and listened to it again, and a thought occurred to me. It's like, okay, because I didn't hate it. I just couldn't get into it. And it finally dawned on me what's going on here. If I walked in to if I walked into the Townhouse Lounge, you know, in downtown Springfield, Missouri, and Little Feat was a house band, and I was sitting there drinking and drinking some long neck beers and hanging out with my friends and doing a little bit of dancing and getting a little loose, I would probably really enjoy this music if that was the music that was happening on stage in that scenario. But just sitting down and listening to it, you know, just listening to the album. Yeah, okay. I didn't hate it, but it was okay. It was okay. I didn't hate it, but I understood it. And I was thinking I would much prefer to be listening to this music, sitting down and drinking some long necks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Are you familiar with the rest of their catalog?
Yeah, I've got several of their studio albums.
Apparently, though, for whatever reason, there was a big shift between their first and their second albums. For whatever reason, I didn't go do too much digging to understand why that happened. But I did also notice that there was one song on the debut album that they repeated on the second album. They re-recorded it on the second album, and I don't remember the title of it, but I thought that was a little odd. But yeah, but that was a pretty interesting shift in strategy, and I just wondered if there was a reason why that happened.
Yeah, I don't remember the names now, but they had some personnel changes, and the new blood that came into the band started pushing them a little bit more toward that New Orleans Southern type sound. And that's kind of what actually ultimately led to the breakup, because Lowell George, who was the leader and founder, was becoming more and more resistant to that sound. So he left the band and went solo and did one solo album, and then died young at a heart attack. And then from that point on, when the band regrouped, you know, they continued on with that Southern New Orleans style.
Well, what if he was the founder and the leader of the group, what pulled him in that direction that he didn't want to go to? Did he prefer doing the country rock?
Yeah, I think so. And interestingly, Lowell George and one other member came out of Frank Zappa's group. Mm-hmm. And so they had, you know, that was their background. And Lowell wrote the song Willin' when he was still with Frank Zappa.
Well, and that's the song that they repeated on the second album.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, so that was definitely had a country tinge to it. So that's, you know, so that's where Lowell George's aim was, that, and maybe, you know, more straight ahead rock. And then I can't remember the name of the person who came in, but there was some new members who came in, and they were pretty influential. So they brought in those musical changes, and it worked for the group. But then I think Lowell George became more and more resistant to it. And then finally that led to their breakup and him leaving.
Got it. Because I know they got some pretty good reviews, and apparently they had a nice core audience there. So
yeah, and you know, they had they survived in one form or another for some odd decades. You know, so yeah, they had a pretty good following.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that was an honest assessment, Scott. I appreciate you digging in that deeply and not just dismissing it out of hand.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't want to do that, because I know on first listen of anything, you know, you get a sense. You get a sense of what it is. It's like, okay, you get a sense of what world you're entering. Okay, and you get an idea. Okay, is this a world I want to get involved in or not? But then I'll listen to it a second time just to see if my first impressions were valid. And if I absolutely hate it the second time, it's like, oh, I'm done. You know, I'm moving on to something else. But however, if I say, oh yeah, there's a little bit to like there, oh, I understand this, or I get that, then I'll go through 2 or 3 more times just to see But by the time you get to the fourth or fifth listen, when you start recognizing the songs and you start, and you start singing along with a couple of the choruses or whatever, and then you recognize certain melodies and things like that, and you walk away from it and you hear those things in your head, then that's when you really start getting an idea of what this of a deeper idea of what's going on here. And the song Dixie Chicken, I did recognize that as a song I'd heard before. Not often. It's not a song that I ever paid attention to when I heard it. It's like, it comes on a radio. It's like, okay, let's get to the next thing.
Yeah.
But I did recognize a couple of the licks and a couple of and probably the verse in that song. Oh yeah, I've heard this one before. And I got to a point where I'd walk away humming that in my head a little while, but it didn't get to the point where I really enjoyed listening to it. So it's like, okay, enough. So Bob, what do you have? You want to bring anything up?
Yeah, real briefly, I don't want to get into a deep discussion because we could tie ourselves up for a long time, but I would urge anybody who goes to Geezerology.com to read your latest piece about Lou Reed. Scott has been a long time Lou Reed advocate, and he's got some very interesting things to say about Reed and some of his albums, and especially about the cultural impact that he sees from Reed's music. And I think it's very interesting, and I would encourage people to go read it.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time writing that, and that the piece I put up there this week was about what I thought were the 4 Reed albums that you need to listen to if you want to know anything about what he was all about. These 4 albums. If you listen to these 4 albums, then you've got a really good idea of what he was.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna follow up with going deeper into his catalog, but I definitely wanted to start there.
Yeah, it's a very well written, very insightful piece.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and I would encourage everybody to go read it.
Right. Yes, please do. Geezerology.com.
All right.
It's a long one, but it's a good one. I was quite happy with the way that turned out. Thanks for bringing that up, Bob.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Bob promised us about 3 or 4 weeks ago that he was going to give Tom Waits a sample, and so I suggested that he start with Waits' 1980 album Heartattack and Vine. This is the album that closed out his career. He closed out his contract with Asylum Records. Pretty much closed out his career as the old Lounge Lizard booze hound guy. And right after this album was when he fired his manager. He got rid of his producer. He met Kathleen Brennan, started going to work in the movies and reevaluating his career, and came up and just started doing something pretty much different. But this is the close of the first half of Tom Waits' career. It's the first album that he went almost not exclusively, but about 80% of the music here is electric guitar based as opposed to piano based, which is what his first few albums were. So this was a little bit different direction he was going in, but then then he called an end to it after this album. I feel it was actually his best album of his first half of his career. Bob, what'd you think?
Okay, all right. So I'm going to be doing a little looking down because I wrote some pretty extensive notes here. But
Okay.
Let me start out by saying that this is kind of what you had to do with Little Feat. You have to give somebody more than one listen to really understand what's going on. And my knowledge of Tom Waits primarily was from the second half of his career, where things got a little weird. And I had a hard time listening to it. I always recognized his ability as a songwriter, but that real guttural voice that he developed and some of the weird musical intonations didn't do much for me. But I sat down and I really listened to this multiple times, and I wound up liking it a whole lot more than I thought I would. And lyrically, I would give this a 9 out of a 10, maybe even a 10 out of a 10. Fantastic songs. He has got wordplay in here that I am so envious of. And a lot of these songs, they just sound like noir pulp fiction.
Yeah.
You know, he's got these songs about urban decay that, I mean, Lou Reed would have to be jealous of. And he's got these songs filled with punks and pimps and grifters and hookers and druggies and naive people out trying to make a big score. And then he's just got awesome one-liners in these songs, like, don't you know there ain't no devil, that's just God when he's drunk. And how do the angels get to sleep when the devil leaves his porch light on? I mean, I love these things. Boney's high on China White, Shorty found a punk. I mean, Lou Reed could have written that. And then, well, this stuff will probably kill you. Let's do another line. I mean, I love these songs. They paint such a vivid picture. Musically, I give this a 6 or maybe a 7 out of 10. I'd have rated it higher, except you got a little bit too much use of strings for my taste. I think some of the songs where he brought in the strings and stuff would have fared better if they were at a more basic level, but that's really a minor point. I like the guitar work. It's got this really jagged blues kind of feel to it. Got some really very cool organ work, the saxophones and stuff. And yeah, you're right about the bulk of it is that guitar blues type feel. And then he's got some piano ballads. That's kind of where the strings came in that bugged me a little bit. I felt that kind of bogged it down a little bit. And the title song, great imagery in that. And then Saving All My Love for You really came as a big surprise to me. I was expecting a cover of that old standard song, and it turned out to be, he just used the title. And what a twisted, weird way of saying this. He sings about buying a $15 hooker, but I'm still saving all my love for you. You know, Downtown, that was a great blues burner. It's got lyrics that just, oh man, they just reach out and grab you. Sally's high on crank and hungry for some sweets. Femme in the sheets, but she's butch in the streets. Jersey Girl, you know, I knew Jersey Girl obviously from the Bruce Springsteen cover first. I liked Waite's version too. It's a song, you know, that he wrote as an ode to his wife. Just a nice, sweet little song. I really liked it. Till the Money Runs Out, that was another cooker. I sold a quart of blood and bought half a pint of scotch. You know, again, just this incredible imagery. Mr. Siegel, God, I love this song. And it's got some of the most fantastic opening lines. I spent all my money in a Mexican whorehouse, babe, across the street from a Catholic church. And I wiped off my revolver and I buttoned up my burgundy shirt. I mean, man, that's like the beginning of a pulp novel, you know? And it had the references to Nevada and gambling. And I'm assuming the Mr. Siegel must be a reference to Bugsy Siegel, the gangster that, you know, started one of the first Las Vegas casinos. Ruby's Arms, that easily could have been such a cliched song because it, you know, it covers the old story of a guy sneaking out of the house at night and abandoning his woman. But Waits manages to tell that story really poignantly, and he keeps it from sounding cliched. Let's see if I got any more notes. No, that's it. Now, that's my review of some of the songs on there. like I say, I really enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. There was one number, I can't remember what, where he did a little bit of those croaking type vocals, and that was a little irritating, but his singing on the album was much more approachable than some of the stuff that I had heard on his newer albums. And like I say, I just fell in love with the imagery in the songs and his wordplay. And it just reinforced my opinion that he's an incredible songwriter.
Waits is a master at painting pictures for your mind, for your brain. I mean,
yes.
he's a storyteller. There's no doubt about a storyteller. He puts you right in the middle of that world that he's writing about.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, from his first album to his last. I mean, everything else that's going on there. There's, you can talk about, his different styles and approaches to the music and everything. But his songwriting remain. I mean, it's just he picks something to write about, and he puts you right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
He puts you right in the middle of it.
Now, this is something that I think I would have to be in a certain mood to sit down and really enjoy.
Oh, no question. Yeah. It's not background music.
No, it's something that you really need to be listening to appreciate. And I've got this kind of, I like film noir stuff. Give me a Humphrey Bogart movie and I'm happy. And I love Dashiell Hammett's and Raymond Chandler and stuff. So that's why I think I appreciated a lot of these songs so much, because like I said earlier, they just sound like noir pulp fiction,
right?
Especially the beginning to Mr. Siegel. And and just what incredible imagery, and I mean, I see this guy hiding out in Mexico, running from his gambling debts and all these things. And, and the imagery of wiping my revolver and buttoning up my burgundy shirt. I'm picturing the guy who's had to use that gun, and his burgundy shirt is covered in blood. That's the, and I'm just seeing this guy in a seedy motel, with a bottle of whiskey and a gun. And it's just, incredible imagery.
My favorite thing in the album was, or the line in the album was, he said a line a couple of times in the opening track of the title track. And it's basically about a guy who's drunk and the bars are closed, and he's just walking around, and they go home, and then he goes back and tells us about how he got there. And the one line is that he's walking down the street, or maybe he's inside the bar. I forget now, but he sees a girl. He got his eye on a girl. He said, well, I think she's still a virgin, but it's only 9:15.
I remember that.
Every time I hear that line, I laugh.
And like I said, I wrote down some of the ones that really just stuck out to me. And as a person who likes to think of himself as a writer, I am so jealous of this. It's just, and he's able to paint this incredible picture in just 2 lines.
He's you mentioned the strings. That is my big problem with this album. The strings on there are 3 songs. There are 3 tracks on there. The closing one, On the Nickel, and what's the one on side 1? I forget. But anyway, but the closing song, Ruby's Arms. I think that's the strings, the orchestration on that is spot on. That's good. But the strings on the Nickel and the strings on the song on side 1, which I have a brain lock with what the title of the song is, are way overdone, and they're really annoying. And that's the big problem with this album. That was his producer, Bones Howe, was really big into that and did that a lot on his earlier albums. And that was one of the things that Waits wanted to get away from. He didn't like that at all. He didn't like that at all. It was that was a production choice by his guy, and that's what Waits said. I'm done with this. I want to do things my way, and that's what he went and regrouped, and then from that point on, Waits produced his own albums. He did everything the way he wanted it. He hated those strings too, and especially on those two tracks, boy, those things are annoying.
You know, and there are times when strings and orchestration can really be effective.
Yeah, it was done well on that closing track, Ruby's Arms. It was perfect. It was pitch perfect on that. But they were just on the Nickel is just a beautiful song, and it's ruined by the strings. You know, strings would have been nice on that song. It gives it a nice little atmosphere, but it's just way overdone. Way overdone.
Yeah, it needed to be much more subtle.
Right. Jersey Girl, I believe he hadn't met his wife at that point, Kathleen Brennan. He hadn't met her yet. Oh, she's from Jersey. I believe that song was written for Ricky Lee Jones, who he was involved with at the time.
Oh, really? I had read somewhere that it was for his wife. So
well, that was his significant other. She was his significant other. They broke up right after this, and then he met Kathleen Brennan, and she became his wife. Well, I'm glad you liked it.
well, and I guess I'm going to have to pay a little bit more attention to you in the future.
I've got a pretty good track record going here with introducing.
Yeah, and you know, sadly, it's like you turned me on to stuff that I really liked, and I haven't been able to do that in return. So
yeah, you got to get away from the live albums, man. Going back to the Little Feat. I mean, if I would have started my Little Feat journey with that second album, I may have become more interested. If that were my first impression, that might have been better. But I was just the live album just didn't work for me. But anyway, getting back to Waits. If you're going to go further, if you're in the mood to go further with him, I would say, just given your reaction here, you would probably serve yourself well by going backwards instead of forwards, because that Heartattack and Vine is more typical of. It's not typical. It was different than what came before, but it's more in the same world as what he did before that than what he did after that. Yeah. Blue Valentine is a good one. There's a lot of film noir going on in Blue Valentine. Check that one out. Well, good. That was a nice discussion. I was surprised again. I listened to Heartattack and Vine a few times leading up to this because I wanted to make sure that I remembered everything and was familiar enough with it that I could have a discussion with you. And the more I listened to it, the more I thought, I don't know if Bob will like this or not. But I was more worried about your reaction to the extremity of his singing style.
Well, this was much. What's the word I want to look for? This was more normal sounding than what I know of his newer stuff. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it or not. Yeah. And this is a little more mainstream, and I think his voice and the instrumentation, for the most part, really fit the words to these songs. These songs would not work with a nice, smooth, polished singer.
Oh, absolutely not. He knows how to. He plays to his strengths. There's no question. Yes. He plays to his strengths. Yeah. He plays to his strengths, and he makes his weaknesses work for him.
Exactly. And I mean, he's telling stories here and painting these word pictures. and that, that raspy voice, a voice that sounds like it's been burned out by way too many whiskeys and too many cigarettes, just fits the mood of this stuff so well, and it's kind of interesting that the music and the stuff he's doing is uplifting at the same time that he's dealing with really grungy stuff, and it's a weird juxtaposition.
He lives on Skid Row through this period of his career anyway, mostly. He lives on Skid Row. He hangs out in the what I call the old man taverns, and hangs out in those, the old seedy residential section, and everybody's boozing, everybody's hustling, but what he does is he makes them human.
Yes.
He makes them real people. They're sympathetic portraits of these people and of their lives, and the worst things that happen to these people, he makes you sympathetic to them, and he can write some viciously dirty, grungy songs, and he can write and sing some just tear-jerkingly beautiful songs too. My favorite from that period, my favorite song of his, and it still is one of my favorite songs of his ever, is I think it's on is it on Blue Valentine? But the title of the song is "A Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis." Yeah. Which is just one of the most tear-jerking songs I've ever heard in my life. The title is a good description of what the song is about. That's a subject matter. Is he got a Christmas card from this hooker he used to know in Minneapolis, and just the tale that he tells is just bring a tear to your eye. Okay. Well, that was good discussion. Good discussion.
Yes, it was.
On Tom Waits. That was really interesting. Okay, I guess next week we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up and go out and enjoy the beautiful Easter Sunday. The heck with us. The dog's
much as I love talking to you, Scott.
Yeah. I love doing his videos, but we don't have many days like this left in South Florida, because before we have 6 months of where the only place you'll want to be is inside. Okay, next week, next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about debut albums. We'll do this same way we did the live albums, only the opposite. I'm going to come at you with 3 debut albums from my collection that I really like, and then the following week, Bob will come at you with 3 of them. In the meantime, at Geezerology.com, check out my Lou Reed piece. I'll have another one coming either later this week or early next week. There's 1 or 2 things I want to do before that. I'm going to do a piece on. I just watched a documentary about the Go-Go's. I never paid much attention to the Go-Go's, but I just saw a documentary on Hulu about the Go-Go's, which I found really interesting, and learned a lot about the Go-Go's, and went and listened to that debut albums of theirs, and I really liked it a lot.
You got the beat.
Yeah, I never paid much attention. It's just this nice little pop song I used to hear or see on MTV or whatever. It's a nice little rock and roll album. So, but I'm not going to write specifically about the Go-Go's, but I'm going to write about this
Oh,
collection of all female rock and roll bands that have
crap. You
come
stole
out.
my idea.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd actually been thinking about doing something very similar.
Yeah. Well, I guess the Go-Go's were the first all-female band who, you know, and this is kind of specific. They're the first all-female band who played all their own instruments, who wrote all their own songs, and who had a #1 album, you know, and so I got to looking at what other female groups are out there. I mean, I'm not going to cover the whole subject. I'm just going to write about 2 or 3 of them. But I'll probably do that, or I may do my second Lou Reed piece first. I don't know. I'll decide later. You got anything coming up, Bob?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 things that are kicking around, and I've come across some unusual things on the internet that I've saved that I think I'm going to build some stories around.
Okay. Check us out at Geezerology.com. We have a pretty good blog going there. And come on back next Sunday, and I'll tell you about some debut albums that I like.
All right, look forward to it.
Happy Easter, everybody.
All right.
See you, Bob.
All right, see you too, Scott.